back again with another edition of my Black Male series. Today up is one of my dogs right here, y'all. I met Nate P in my Virginia Beach journey, man. I want everybody to give my dog.
What's
Nate,
good?
how you feeling, baby?
What's good, family? We became real close. It was off a book. I saw my brother. I was like, okay, okay. He was like, look, I got you when I'm done with that joint. He just started it. But I swear, about 2 days later, he said, "Oh, you know what I mean? I got you. You can come get it." He was finished with it. So,
Well, you
we
got
just
to remember, Nate, like I tell everybody, man, when you ain't have no cable growing up, you had to go to the next best thing. You know what I mean? People always say, where did the love of reading come from? Literally, because we ain't had no cable, Nate. We ain't had no TVs like it, so I had to figure it out. So
yeah,
that's the truth. But Nate, man, starting with my dog, man. Nate, tell me your earliest memory ever in life.
mm. Well, I didn't know it was going deep. I ain't know it was going this deep, man. I ain't know.
Always, always. Don't be afraid. Remember, this could be a younger Nate that need to hear this. Your earliest memory ever. You tell me about it, dog. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Man, this was deep. Um, mm. So my parents got divorced, and we always met at this McDonald's, up the street. Like they lived so close, but then the McDonald's was further than even they lived. They ain't want to come to each other's house and stuff. And I just remember, one time, one Saturday, moms weren't there, so I was crying and stuff like that. And I didn't understand it at the time. Now me and my mom have a great relationship. But she had to go and get herself together, figure it out. I think as I get older, you just figure out, like, parents, they just people. You know what I'm saying?
Facts. That's a bar, man. Shout out to my dog, man. And Nate, I'm glad that you brought that up, man. So describe childhood for Nate. If I had to talk to born to 10-year-old Nate, how was he? What was he about? What was it, man? What was he learning? Describe that to me.
Man, childhood was great because this was like the pre social media, pre computer era. So, I had my little brother. He was like a year and some change younger than me. So it was, before it was Nate, it was the boys. Where the boys? The boys. Like, I ain't even had no individual name. So, I had my brother. We played games and we just went outside and played with kids in the neighborhood, and then, like, played football and basketball. Other neighborhoods, we would just walk everywhere, ride our bikes. So that was childhood, for me. Family.
Family. That's a good word, man. It sounds peaceful, Nate. Sounds stable. Most black men don't have stable homes and environments. So that's good to hear that, Nate. So as long as I've been knowing my dog, Nate, he has been entrepreneur, y'all. Y'all might not know Nate gave me the entrepreneur bug, telling me always about getting money. So when did that start in you, Nate? Like that, yo, T, you got to have something. You got to hustle. You got to, because you taught that to me. I got to give everybody that.
Man, so like I said, just growing up, I think I had to be, you know 11, 12 years old, would cut the grass. And so, my pops was like, go cut your grandma's grass. So me and my brother would push the lawnmower all the way to her house. It was about 7 blocks, you know what I'm saying? And one time, like, this older lady came out on her yard. She was like, y'all cut grass. I looked at my brother. I said, for $20. And you know what I mean? That was 10 and 10, boy. Look,
Bust it down.
coming back. So, that's kind of, when it started, just like the opportunity, was there. We got back. We did get a beating. My daddy said, where was y'all at? Look,
Show him the money. You ain't showing the bread.
and had that bread. Look, don't tell nobody. That happened. We had a little, built a little um grass cutting business from that. Then like I said, my mom's like, once she kind of got together, she was like sending us gifts and stuff. Like we always had the best gifts.
Yeah, yeah.
Computer with a CD burner. And so, we had been going to the barber shop. We saw everybody getting it with the bootleg CDs coming through. So we started, burning CDs, selling our bootleg CDs, and it was a real business because Pops won't buy no Jordans. We had to, buy it for ourselves. So we burnt them CDs. Man, we sold them everywhere. Church, school, to the neighborhood, whoever wanted it.
I got you, G. Now I've been noticing. Shout out to my dog with his journey, Nate. So as you continue to age, I hear him, bro. I'm hearing the journey, Nate. How was middle school, Nate? What was Nate on in middle school? You starting to develop. You still a young man, but you starting to notice things. How was that journey starting to go?
So, kind of early on, like I said, when my parents divorced, it was, we was very smart, like, me and my brother and, different things. I remember, gifted and talented this and, different stuff. Like you said, reading, they had the accelerated reader program.
Yeah. But as you were saying, Nate, man, at middle school, Nate, how was that journey, man? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, middle school, um, it was good because, like I said, when my parents split, it was kind of like, I was just so smart, the accelerated reader program. You had to read books and take a test and get points. Like they had the like the rainbow, like them going, the school was trying to get to the end of the rainbow. Me and this other girl was on the sun. We had more more points than the whole school combined. But it's just like being that, gifted. It was like, okay, once I was done with the work, it was like, okay, now it's time to play. You know what I mean? What's up? Okay, what's the next assignment? So I kind of started getting in trouble in school, and my dad just, doing what, kind of just doing the best he could. He was like, okay, I'm gonna put you in Virginia Beach schools. So I went to school in Virginia Beach. I went to Larkspur Middle, it's like one of the biggest middle schools. I think it's like the biggest middle school in Virginia, or maybe at the time, but like 1,000 kids. Like, it's built like a high school, but it was a big middle school. They had a lot of like, activities there. It was challenging, Virginia Beach being one of those good school systems. So I liked that, and I got there. Man, it was just like, kids had pools in their backyard, trampolines. I said, "Oh, we done made it. I'm staying here." We went to Virginia Beach Middle School. Went to Larkspur Middle, a big middle school. He had a lot of programs. Was on the wrestling team, the track team, chess team, debate team, every team. And Virginia Beach, they really had a good school system. So, my pops was, really doing his thing with that move. And, when I started to interact with the kids there, like parents had pools in their backyards, trampolines. I was like, this the life right here, It was like, yeah, we just, we have sleepovers, we let y'all chill. What y'all want? Pizza, wings? You know what I mean? I was like, what? We get to choose? Like, so, that was that was popping. Middle school was real good. Middle school was real good.
Good, bro. Good. All right. Good, man. So the
Uh,
trajectory went well. So when did that high school era, Nate, describe that? Nate growing older, middle school's good. You made a big move going to a new middle school outside of your comfort zone. So as you went to high school, did you stay in the
yeah.
Virginia Beach? Did you come back to Portsmouth, Norfolk? How did that go?
Man, I stayed a little bit and in middle school because I still like lived in Norfolk for a little bit, then moved to Virginia Beach for a little bit. Like I was kind of back and forth, and I started to understand like networking. Like
really going that transition to high school. So it was like I had my church friends, over here. I had my, Norfolk friends, my Virginia Beach friends, and I was selling, the bootleg CDs. So it was some people, some of my friends that didn't have the CD burner. I was like, look, let me just keep two off of every CD. The rest is yours. You good? So I was just enterprising in that way, and so high school, I went to Kentsville High School for 2 years. Met some good people there. Some of them still in my life to this day. But man, it was and that was cool. You know what I'm saying? Like Kentsville, it was all right, but it was kind of like, I ain't gonna say less diverse, but yeah, it was like a group of black kids. You know what I'm saying? We was like a minority, so we kind of stayed tough in that school. But man, they had the yearbooks. And man, the yearbooks, I just remember like it just being a crazy price. It was like $80 or something. And there was like this closet with the yearbooks, and I was wrong. You know what I mean? Went in the closet, took the yearbooks. We had big clothes, put them underneath the t-shirt. Came back about 2, 3 times, and then I started selling the yearbooks for half off. So they say, yeah, yeah, Mr. Parker, you can't come back here no more. So I went back to Norfolk. This is a true story. True story.
It's
Went
all
back to
right. It's
Norfolk.
all right. It's all right.
Um, and at the time, so I lived like really close to Booker T. I lived really close to Booker T in Norfolk State. And I was like, oh nah, I'm gonna get in trouble. You know what I'm saying? If I live this close to my school. So there was a little leadership academy in Norview. Me and my brother got in. So we went to Norview, and they just built a new school. So it was a brand new school. So I went there, and then my brother, my brother kind of got kicked out and went to Booker T. So I still had, the Booker T fam, the Norview fam, the Kentsville fam, the Larkspur, all of that. So yeah, went to Norview, graduated from Norview. It was a good time there. I was in, advanced classes, and my picture was hanging up on the walls, scoring I scored in the top 5% of the SAT when they had made a new like SAT. So they it was me and a few other students, but I kind of liked it. It was like school was kind of half and half, like half black, half white, but we was, it was not just me. Like out of the five people, we might have three, black people that was, really doing good in the academics. And yeah, I would say that was like, that was the time because I was coming from Virginia Beach. So, I've kind of picked up a few things there. I was rocking Vans and, just different with style, Pharrell and Kanye had came out. So, I was like adopting their style. And when I got back to Norview, like the kids tried to joke, you know what I mean? And they was, oh, they would be like, Gene check, Gene check. And I remember I had on like seven for all mankind, and they was like, what's this? This ain't Rockaware. I'm like, boy, ask your mama, these 200 jeans. But so I just, kind of had to have my own identity because, I had to go back, to Norfolk, and, I had changed so much, since leaving. So
So did
yeah,
that
man,
start the fashion
good times.
enterprise journey? Because ever since I know Nate, you've been a different inside the fashion thing. How did that journey? Did that start from those outcomes, Nate? Because I hear you reference it, or was that
I
always
think
there?
that definitely did start there. I remember we did a fashion show. I helped, direct the fashion show my senior year. Like I was, in the SGA. So they had like the senior shirts, and people used to pop their collar. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to 3 6 Mafia.
3 6.
Since I can remember. So, on the pop collar, but like we put senior on the back. So like when you popped it, then you saw senior. You know what I'm saying? So that was like, little things that I was doing. I remember when the snowman t-shirts came out, my people's from Pakistan, they had a little convenience store, in the back. I was friends with their son. So they, got me the snowman t-shirts, you know what I mean, sold them, you know, and it was just like just seeing like the different fashion. You might bring something new and people, don't like it this year, but the next year they liking it or later on. So yeah, I think it definitely did, kind of start there, like
Okay,
right
good.
there.
So I hear Nate getting it, Nate the hustling, the energy is there. I can already see the small steps, entrepreneurship. I see the small steps into fashion beginning. Graduation time comes, Nate. Was it always Norfolk State? Because I know you missed the Norfolk State, or was it of the schools? How did that come
And
about?
it was always Norfolk State. I got accepted in the VCU. Like, like I said, just me and real smart. I was kind of just focusing on like what make a lot of money. So biology program, VCU had a good program with that, and CSI was real popular. So
Mhm.
forensic science. So I was kind of like gonna be into that. So that's what I was kind of looking for. So I got accepted in a VCU, but it was Norfolk State, and I ain't even really applied nowhere else for real. I was just trying to make parents happy and stuff. They was like, you can't just go to Norfolk State. I'm apply to VCU, but
Well, the one thing I know
yeah,
too, Nate, I
I
don't know if you
made
even
that
catching it.
decision.
Nate was very conscious of race and other things that was
Was
going
that?
on. So I can definitely hear that the conscious side of you
Yeah,
already being there earlier. I'm hearing that a lot. When did that come about, Nate?
man. So, I grew up very close to Norfolk State. So it's like I played basketball at Norfolk State. Matter of fact, I went to preschool at Norfolk State. So, it was just like I went to the library at Norfolk State. So just like seeing, black people like, I just always thought like we was excellent. You know what I mean? I always thought like, man, these like black people is dope. And, just in the library, different librarians would kind of take me to the side, read this or, read that. I encountered, teachers that, kind of really cared and, gave me books and stuff like that. So, you know, I just I just knew like, what I mean, black people like, we the original people, you know what I'm saying? That's just so I had that pride. So when I went to Virginia Beach and it was kind of like, white people was kind of running it, you know what I mean? And it was like, hold on, this kind of weird in a sense, but it's like they couldn't, kind of shake my pride, So just understanding that like at a very early age and just reading things like, I would get into like Nat Turner. Nat Turner's, from Southampton County. So this stuff happened
Mhm.
real close. And just really realizing some of these historical moments like happen like in the backyard, like Norfolk and um was it like
Jamestown. Come on, man.
Jamestown,
All that stuff.
um Yorktown, like these are some of the oldest cities, Portsmouth, like the oldest cities in, the United States,
Mhm.
period. So it was like realizing that, but just, to me, just seeing like what we was doing, I was just like, oh nah, it's nothing, what I mean, kind of nobody can say to me then and and just even knowing like black business owners, Grill D owned the barber shop, and this person, owned the car wash. You had Big Daddy's like restaurants and different things, like just that was just like the norm, for me. So I was aware of it. I definitely was aware of it, at a young age. But I think my like perception was different because it's like it didn't start off with racism. Like it didn't start off like, oh, you less than or, in a I didn't feel like I grew up in a predominantly white society. Like I grew up, it was even Norfolk was like half and half. So I just thought like, half black people, half white people. And then, when I started to learn about, the US in the US is like a white majority, but in the world, it's a black majority. So,
Mhm.
you know,
No, that's real, Nate. That's real, man.
yeah.
And that's a great breakdown, Nate. Because I would always say, Nate, out of all my homies I'd have met early on, you had the most cultural pride when it came to that early on. Most brothers grow
Mhm.
into it, but you had that spiritual side that was, I'm good. I'm good enough. It was
Yeah.
always grounded. You know what I mean? So I definitely can give you kudos for that, man. So when you going to Norfolk State now, Nate, you get there freshman year. Walk me through
Yeah.
it. Walk me down.
Man, I was, like I said already, like summer bridge program. Like I graduated, I probably had 2 weeks, you know what I'm saying, to myself. I had already kind of started working. So it was just like, you know, just coming into like what we, kind of already knew with certain people, that was in my summer bridge. And we connected, we formed study groups, and the dorms, the pep rallies, you know what I mean, every Friday, when we had a game. So it was just dope. And just like, going to see the band march in, going to see the football team, basketball team, like it was that experience. But it was still, the classroom. Like I said, I was majoring in biology early. um Started, I was throwing little parties, I mean, had my little group in high school. And so we kind of evolved and started throwing parties and stuff like that. And I kind of came in, when I came in, it was right at a time it was a little shift. Like it used to be like the frat, ran like the yard and, did all the parties. But, Norfolk, they was, when they, oh, we need our taxes, y'all can't do this, y'all can't do that. Um, the Kappas actually had, got suspended for a little bit. So it was kind of time for the promoters, to kind of, step up, do our thing, throw the biggest parties. So, it was a great time. It was certain people, Young Money Yon, J King actually started Not Your Typical Homecoming. Shouts
Ah,
out to him. He just
mhm.
got his trademark and everything. So we was, doing parties together. It was a few groups, at that time. So the promoters really started running the yard. And it's a funny story because people like they weren't in my classes in the biology. I was, with all the, nerds and the real smart people in the biology classes. And they used to think like I would just come up to the campus, like I ain't even go there, like I would just be promoting my party, and they ain't see me, in class. I'm like,
That's
so
funny.
that
So
was
when
that
you
was
know
a good time right there.
So I remember them a little young, but I remember when the promoter era definitely took over the HBCU scene. I remember that, Nate. When did you notice
Mhm.
that boom really start to happen? Did you feel it quick, like, oh yeah, this thing is we on a gold mine, or how did you feel like it was coming? Because I definitely think you caught that wave early.
Yeah, I mean, I felt it like, I ain't know what it was to like kind of feel like it was a wave. Like I just felt like, okay, boom, like this is what you do. You know what I'm saying? So, I saw people getting money, you know what I'm saying? I started getting money with them. And just even being exposed to like different cultures, like, DC had a strong culture, it was
Mhm.
different things, like started rocking the phone posits and stuff like that. Like I said, just being, from that middle school to high school to Virginia Beach, like I already had all the confidence. So, people didn't even know kind of where I was from. Like they didn't even believe I was from Norfolk. Some people thought I was from Cali. They was really from Cali. They thought I was from Cali, like I said, just picking up different things, New York, and then, actually being from Norfolk, like I ain't. like I said, this was like, I think Facebook was out, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't that everybody pull out your phones and, record stuff. So, people would still get beat up, you know what I'm saying? Like, but stepping on a plot or something. But, it was just, I ain't have like no fear, you know what I'm saying? Like, might be like, the football player's girlfriend or something, she was talking to me in class. And I'm like, look, like, my people's from Norfolk. Like, it's gonna take them 6 minutes to get here. You know what I mean? They ain't doing no talking. So, you know what I mean? I just had, you know, all the confidence that, my neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, really, and I was kind of introducing some of them to like the culture of Norfolk State and, on the weekends. And I'm like, all right, y'all, I'm going back to class,
So
So,
what I hear, Nate, is you were still connected. You were very much a connector early on, from the streets to the
mhm,
classroom to the college experience. So Nate was, hey y'all, I want y'all to be able to see different things in different forms, man. That's awesome, G. So I hear the
yeah,
entrepreneur spirit still there. I hear the salesman.
yeah,
I hear the sales skills. I hear the promotion. So as you next second year in Norfolk State, Nate, you survive year one. Second year,
okay,
when what happened? Talk to me.
okay. Man, second year, I mean, that's when it really just started getting good because it was already you had that track record. Like, okay, we threw this party, now this part two, spring bling part two, just different things. And just now you a sophomore, it's like the freshman coming in, you might grab up a, freshman under your wing. Okay, look, I see you got things going. Look, let me put you on, my team and promote this, blah, 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 get them a little chat. And, it was really popping. So, like I said, that was just like, I didn't know what else to do, but get money, refund checks. And this was '06, '07. So this even before like, the housing, not the housing crisis, but remember when, just they was giving all the credit, like,
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember that era.
yeah, for the houses and stuff. So, what I mean, people really had money back then. I kept my little jobs up against the wall. I was, manager there. And then I worked at Nordstrom. I was trying to get to the women's shoe department, but I had to get in where I fit in. So I was in a cafe. Man, they would, come in and on a little shift, like tips be 300, you know what I'm saying? I might spend all of that, in the club, you know what I mean? Just showing love. And it's like, this before like bottles. Like the only bottle was the green Moet bottle, you know what I'm saying? Like that was the only bottle with champagne. So, just shots, drinks, that's just how we would have fun. And there was VIP. It wasn't VIP sections. You know what I'm saying? It was just the VIP area. So, you would go in there and, you know, holler at people in there. I was just like I said, I was just both. So I would go in the VIP section, you know what I mean? Holler at the people there. Then I would go to the floor, then I would go to the bar. Like, I didn't I ain't gonna say discriminate, but I didn't like just fit into one like mold. So, it definitely had a good time. Like that second year knew what everybody was doing.
It definitely sounded like the momentum was there, Nate. You glowing up, Nate hitting the scene, you making some money, you still can live in the college life, you live in the college experience. Was this the
Them
start of a
refund
trap
checks was
tastic?
hitting.
Was that the refund checks was hitting? Was this the
Them
start of the
refund checks
trap
was hitting.
tastic? Or was this not there yet? Is that later on? Am I jumping
Not
too
there
far?
yet. That's later on. Like, yeah, I think I probably had met Rodney around that time. So we had like different groups. I think he was running with a party paparazzi. I was running with super villains, executive marketing. There
Break
was
all those
different
down, Nate. People that don't know. People that don't know, break all that what that
there was
means.
different promotion groups that threw parties like in the area. So, it was everybody was kind of like, kind of getting their, finding where they fit in and, making their money. It was different groups. There was like So Focused, there was King Promo, like I said, Jay King, Yon, So Serious Corporate Club. I used to, do stuff with them. There was Amber Hurley. Uh, it was just different groups, like I said. And then the frats would kind of get together. They still kind of held their stunning stage, cabaret, and different things like that. So, nah, that wouldn't. Man, the trap tastic started in 2015. So
Oh
there
wow.
was,
Yeah, that was almost 10 years later.
yeah,
Dang, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
yeah. So this was like, it was a whole, like this era. And like I said, it wasn't documented in that way. Like the party paparazzi did document it, but something kind of happened to their files and they lost like all this stuff from that era. But some stuff still on Facebook, and Fat Boy still got some stuff like in the archives if he dig through. So yeah, that was that era. Like we always been kind of getting money from events. Um and yeah, and then when we would throw parties in Miami for spring break,
I remember
we would
Nate doing that.
go to DC, do something with the Alphas. It was like all black. We did it like at this museum. Like it was. Man, it was a time. I wish I would have known, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just really, like, how special this was. Like, I would have, what I mean, more cherished it, more documented myself. Cause when I started throwing parties, I had bought all the camera equipment, all the, like, what I mean? I
Oh,
had my stuff, like, in my parties. And, my friends started Party Paparazzi. Dominique Little, we actually grew up, well, it was two neighborhoods apart. Like he was in the new neighborhood, what I mean? I was in the old neighborhood. And he was like, man, look, like, just let me shoot at your party. I was like, I already got my own stuff, but what I mean? I did a favor for a friend, and you know, I just started to kind of more specialize in just throwing the party where he was like, specializing in that photography and videographers, as well. So, I had those people. Um, and like I said, if I just would have known it was kind of coming to an end, or I don't know, I would have made some different moves, back then. I mean, I was a teenager, you know what I'm saying? I
yeah,
was
yeah.
second year of college, I'm 19. Matter of fact, I graduated when I was 17. So,
Yeah,
you
well, I
know.
think Nate, y'all had something that was clearly you didn't know what it was. I remember hearing about them guys, Nate. And, I came into Hampton 2011, Nate. But I remember y'all still
Okay.
had the motion in.
Yeah.
Y'all was still big, and I remember hearing about what y'all was doing. So it's not that
Yeah.
y'all; it was organic, bro. Nobody knew it. Like I
No.
said,
And we
and
had some people in Hampton. Like I
yeah,
said, from that networking, we would go to different schools. So Hampton,
yeah.
I think Corey B was over there for a little bit. Chris
Mm-hmm,
Roy, definitely. Chris
mm-hmm.
Roy was from Hampton. Terry Parker.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple of guys we would like link up and do a Hampton thing. There's a not a bowling alley, a skating rink out there. We would do an event, what I mean, once or twice a year. Um, yeah,
But
Hampton, ODU, what I'm
y'all
saying?
had
We
a
had people there. Virginia State, of course.
mhm,
Um, Jerome Hood was out there.
mhm. Well,
Man,
I
it
think the
was it was
big
a long
thing for
time
me,
ago.
Nate, but for me,
Yeah.
Nate, it was just y'all was so young having that whole region on lock. Y'all could throw
Mm.
something like y'all really had the influence, especially around that time where this was early on. Trayvon Martin, Nate, all that stuff was going on. Y'all could bring people out. So it was
Yeah.
early on where I saw, like, I knew Nate a little bit, but we weren't boys yet. But I was like, I see the motion. You can see, like, man, these brothers got stuff going on. Now, like I
Mm.
said, those skill sets still with you in life, but just seeing that and that energy, man, it just showed your entrepreneurship, your fashion journey, your adult life into manhood, all that stuff, Nate. So, what was your lowest point at Norfolk State, Nate? I heard it good. When did it start getting
Yeah.
crazy? The grades,
Man,
life,
so
girlfriend.
by my third year, and it was like I didn't even realize, like, I just always like had a girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't realize, like, just it got a little crazy, you know what I'm saying? But my third year, I like dropped out. I was like, oh, I'm making so much money. We were throwing like 6 parties a week.
Mm.
Um, I dropped out. I said I'm coming back. So I kind of like took a year off, but like I said, I didn't know I was doing. They said, "Oh, you ain't withdraw, so you know what I mean, you owe this balance and blah blah
Ooh.
blah." And I think I owed maybe like 3,000, you know what I'm saying? So it was not a lot, but it was a lot at the same time back then. And I said, all right, you know what I mean? I'm gonna just, flip me some shoes and stuff and, kind of make that back and, I'm gonna get back to it. But I think around that time, and I don't know whether it was like 2009, 2010, but one of the guys I was running with, he did videos. Shout out to Video Chris, Chris Latouche. He had, started running with Ross, I believe. So he was doing some stuff like that, and then some people in Miami, saw him and wanted to hire him, and they knew about our parties that we did like every spring break, so they kind of hired us. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to school. You know what I mean? Y'all do y'all thing, and they were kind of doing their thing in Miami, coming back from time to time. And then Ross was, running with Puff at the time. Um, and Puff was about to, you know what I mean, start Revolt TV. So,
Mm.
we just had kind of an opportunity to go to LA. Like, yeah, like I had a job offer with Revolt, like to start Revolt, as a blogger.
Wow.
And but it was for 40K in LA. So I was like, I can't, you know what I mean? That's look,
That's rough right
that's
there.
like minimum wage. Like I was like, nah,
Woo.
I can't do that. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? So, and then I still hadn't graduated, you know what I'm saying? So I just, stayed back, let the guys go, come back from time to time. I would visit them and Jay Murphy, was out there and whenever like somebody from Virginia, came, they would really roll out the red carpet. Like, it was really good times like during that era. But, like I said, I just really wanted to go back and get went back working in the mall. So like Up Against the Wall was now Identity. So I still had my little spot there. And dang, and then I met the mother of my child. So, we was dating. Um, but, didn't have a child yet. But what else happened? Yeah, so it was kind of a low point because and it just wasn't, the best relationship, one of those, what I mean, toxic ones, you know what I mean? So, all my uh all my black kings out there, you know what I'm saying? Just make your best decision early, you know what I'm saying? Just and then sometimes like I think the reason why like they don't want you to live with a person like cuz you like too stuck, you too involved like so just date, kind of see who right for you. So then I had kind of moved out of there. I was, on my sister's couch, you know what I mean, just going to work, you know what I mean, flipping my little shoes and stuff like that. So I was started saving up money. And, I remember I think I had like half the money and I went to my pops because I was trying to move back in my pops crib and he was like, no. But I had half the money and he was like, all right, well, I'll put the other half. And so it was kind of like too late, you know what I'm saying, to get back in that semester. So I had to wait till the next semester. And then I had to do like all this stuff because I had took so many. I was in there for 3 years. So I would have to I don't know if y'all heard of a SAP, but like the satisfactory academic progress. So I would have to, file that, every year and stay on that. And then I changed my major to business because I was like, this where I'm supposed to be at. But thinking that summer, I was waiting, to go back to school, that's when my son's mom called me, I'm pregnant, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, I didn't want to believe it, you know what I'm saying? I was like, this, yeah, that was kind of, and not to say like having a child was a low point, but it was just like, I was just getting back. So, but I did, kind of have another business opportunity. So Identity went out of business. They went bankrupt. And it was some guys I knew who wanted to, come into that space and they started a store. The store was called Nasarima. So, had a streetwear store, converted all the computers and stuff like that, did the whole inventory system every day. Like I think it was 2012. So in 2012, I had my son in April and I only missed 4 days of work. We was, selling shoes. We used to auction off shoes. The mall came in, said we can't do that no more. This was in Military Circle Mall. We had a lot of streetwear brands. We had like Stussy, Obey. We was the first store to sell Pink Dolphin. We sold spray ground book bags. They weren't really moving like that, but now they're, so popular. But like I said, you just kind of see those things like just being on the forefront. And we was a streetwear store, but at the time they sold like urban wear. But once they saw like
Mm,
what we were selling, like the main guy, like the district manager, he was headquartered out of like Hampton, like they had a good store over there. Man, this Negro would be, what I mean, in Norfolk about 2, 3 times a week, what I mean, seeing what we were selling. So, that was a little, era there. Pusha T had bought Cream. So, he came to the store. He what I mean, he spent like, 10 racks when he came, bought cause kind of up and,
yeah.
different birthday parties and different events, did that. It was like a low point to, another era, I would say. And then, going back to school, that was the good thing. And then it was just like it was easy, but it was more of like, hey, they were putting like terms, on what I had been doing. So I really like enjoyed that. And I don't know what I was thinking really majoring in biology, but I think like our parents just wanted us like, lawyer, doctor, firefighter. You know what I mean? They just wanted us to be these things that, they weren't. So, in a sense, it was like, okay, y'all got the opportunity to be these things, but it's just like no experience. So, to me, I didn't major in business because I thought it was an easy major. You know what I mean? I thought it was like, oh, I'm already doing this, but I should have kind of, majored in that first. So it's like whatever you really interested in, passionate and got a skill in, that's what you pursue. Like things that come easy to you, not just, doing something because like other people can't do it. So it's yeah, that was my thing. And I know, I mean, a few doctors now, I mean, a few nurse practitioners, that was in my, class and stuff like that. So, you know,
No, I definitely think that was a good message, Nate. And I think that was a great start to
but yeah.
figuring out as a man what you want to do. So I heard that, man. Junior gets here, Nate. How does it change your life? I heard him come. You were still working. Did you process fatherhood yet? Did you really understand it? I ain't know what was going on. Like, walk me through that, man.
Yeah. Well, my aunt, she had a daycare, you know what I mean? She done raised so many generations, you know what I mean, of
Hmm.
Parkers, Blands, Browns, everything in between. So let me, get some skills over there. So I would help her with the daycare and just learn stuff, how to change a diaper, you know what I mean? So it's like I went to kind of school, in my own way. And yeah, my aunt Valerie Bland, I still get advice, from her, you know what I mean, different, areas of my life. So I just had like a little, training and, we used to do half and half. We do 1 week on, 1 week off. So, I really, had my son and navigated that and just, studied and different things. Some of my professors, knew my child and different things like that. So, um, yeah, it was fatherhood, but it is, it's different. It's different stages, you know what I'm saying? It was like, the newborn stage and then they start crawling, getting into stuff. You gotta baby proof the crib and then, starting to read and stuff like that, starting to talk. So it was a little era and then I ended up graduating in 2015. So,
Okay,
he
okay,
was
got it.
he was like 2, 3. So
That's a big
yeah.
deal, Nate. So you started and you finished. So you
Yeah.
done with school now, Nate. You getting out here. You trying to figure out the work thing.
Took me
Uh,
9 years.
it's
Took
okay.
me nine,
Hey,
nine years. Yeah.
I learned early on, Nate. Degrees don't have years because they're long as you finish. People don't know that. Every other
Mm.
thing has a
Yeah.
time frame. The degrees don't have a time frame because it's different for everybody. But you finish. That's the key.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you out here, Nate, in the real
Uh-huh.
world. How was the young adulthood life? You out here, you graduated, you got a son. What's your next move?
Um, well, it was the Traptastic was forming, at that time. I was still doing events, with Fat Boy and, just different people, at that time. But Rodney had started the Traptastic. I remember going to the first one, having a blast. Um, and then graduated. Oh, worked for Sherwin Williams. So I had interned with Sherwin Williams before I left. And I just remember Dana was working there. That was one of my boys from, Norfolk and Norfolk State, just as well. And he was working there and he was like just a manager so fast. I was like, how did you do that? And I was looking
Mm-hmm.
at stocks. What company could I, work with, buy the stock, contribute to the success of the company. Um, so I interned for Sherwin Williams that summer, like before I graduated, and was still working there, part time. I graduated. Now I did kind of venture off, and then Nasrima closed before I started working for Sherwin Williams. But I ventured off and worked for a brand out of Cali called Boulevard Supply. Soldier Boy was, repping that for a little time. And I was I was living in Orange County, but we would kind of drive to LA sometimes. But I was there for like 3 months and just, I got a whole crew that was in, LA. Didn't see them no time. Like
Wow.
but we was with Wiz Khalifa and Two Chains and Twister. Like we was with these cool people, but it was like, yo, where the homies at? And I mean, I just remember out there the culture, like they would just love the strip club. I'm like, yo, like I do not want to go to the strip club. But when I came back, I saw, my job assistant manager was still available. Of course it was. So, I went in and Sherwin Williams and man, I felt like, we was working for the same, company But
Mhm.
it was definitely some racism going on there because
Mhm.
they sent and not Sarima, man. First year, like we did six figures in sales, like what I mean, our first year of business, and it was like I had that story, what I mean, and I thought that would mean a lot to a company, but nah, like I ain't even gonna say his name, but district manager at the time, he sent me, he said, nah, go to Moyock, North Carolina, which was the smallest store in the whole district. And I'm like, y'all white people are amazing. Yeah.
It was
But
just a learning experience. You know what I'm saying? That's all it was. It's a part of the Nate P story. It's a part of because you learned then, Nate,
yeah.
that you weren't corporate. You know that. That's the main thing.
Yeah. They said, yeah, go down here, run the smaller store. But I still had a lot of free time. I had a lot of free time. So I still, through my events and, was making my money. And I figured out, one of the things in Sherwin Williams was like, if you don't have enough staff, like, usually as a manager, you exempt from overtime. But if you don't have enough staff to work it, then you're not. So I really figured out how to get the same salary, I was getting, when I came to Norfolk, and that was one of like the bigger stores in the district. But people was like, oh, the manager promoted you, and it's like, look, like either he was gonna pay me for what he's paying me now for running a $2 million store, or pay me what he paying for running a 400,000 a year store. So you pick, so it was there. And it was definitely a time because it was certain things like, that I would want to do. I'd be like, okay, we should probably close on Sundays, in this store. And no, we can't do it. But then a year later, for the white manager, oh, they closing on Sundays, you know what I'm saying? And then just even the assistant managers, like some of them that didn't come through the same program, they weren't getting paid as much. So, just like, devise a little plan that they could get paid. And then, real me and you started like a black, managers, kind of
Mhm.
little like meeting, and they took that joint too when they had the black leaders and stuff like that. But all of a sudden it was open up to everybody, like no. But it was just, I definitely got a taste of like you know the corporation, and I worked there for 7 8 years. So I definitely put some time in. And even like some of the people that I met, like they were business owners. I met a lot of Hispanic, paying one of my biggest customers. He was Hispanic, and just seeing like the pride that he had, and he'd be sending money back, and had a whole farm in his country that he was from. And then the black people, like they was like kind of putting me on game of like buying
Mhm.
houses and stuff like that. So that was really my goal, to purchase, my house. And I got a lot of, what I mean, good game, from that era, and just was like
Mhm.
just learning stuff, like learned about like the 401k match
Mhm.
and what you could do, with that, and how you could donate, how it was sheltered from taxes. And
Mhm.
and I kind of cashed out real. That was one of the, what I mean, biggest paydays in my life. That I used to, man, I used to put 17%, what I'm saying, my 401k. And the seven, I think they matched the seven. So that was really 14 off the seven, and then 10 off of myself. So I did that. And yeah, that was a big corporate move. So
And
yeah.
I
And then
think
I,
the
I
biggest
would say
thing.
too, just kind of getting back. Oh,
No,
I was
what
gonna
you
say, getting
saying,
back
Nate?
to like what we saying, the low points. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like boom, low point going, going back to school, high point, low point, is definitely, peaks and valleys, with all of that.
Well, I think that's good. And I think the one thing that we kind of misconstrue, we think life gonna be smooth, and nah, it ain't like it. Like you said, Nate said I had highs of highs, real, then I was low. So we gotta give that story. A lot of
Yeah.
times we don't tell the kids that, Nate. We tell them it's gonna be all right, Nate. You gonna go to college and get a job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might not be no job.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
might have to flip and sleep on a sister's couch, Nate. Like you said, a lot of stuff, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're gonna
Yeah. No,
encounter
definitely.
racism, all that.
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah.
now,
So it was definitely different obstacles within
and
that.
as you continue to grow, Nate, I heard that. So you left corporate. As you got left corporate, Nate secured his house, man. You did what you wanted to do, Nate. All your accomplishments are getting done. What was that period like in that point in season of life, man? What was that looking like for Nate the man? Did you know what you was gonna do? Did you figure it out? I ain't know nothing because I mean it's a whole new transition for you, fam.
Yeah. Hmm. I did have an idea, what I'm saying, and a trajectory of what I wanted to do. So, that's one of the reasons why, I got with the Traptastic and, partnered up with Rodney because I knew that thing could tour. You know what I'm saying? So it was that, and then the different artists that were coming through. It was Masego, it was Young Crazy. Um, Man, it was a lot of people, at that time.
Mhm.
Drum was coming up. Um, yeah, it was just a lot of people, and you saw like, okay, not everybody was an artist, so they kind of needed that guidance. Um, but I think like, just in the area it was a gift, but not my calling. And so, when I left Sherwin Williams, I mean, that was definitely, like I said, one of those low points because there was an error on my state police record and, said, I was a felon. So, I had been charged with a felony, but, it got reduced to a misdemeanor. Um, so I really couldn't like get a real job, what I'm saying, for 2 years. So if I didn't, have a hustle or didn't know how to throw a party or know how to, what I'm saying, get me, $50, what I'm saying, for painting the house, what I'm saying, that day, then, I really wouldn't have made it. But, throughout that time, like I had to like work, what I'm saying? It's almost like you're working on yourself and trying to like, you know, uh you're trying to accomplish your goals like without like, hey, I'm working at this place, and if I do this, I'm gonna get promoted. And if I do this, I'm gonna get a paycheck. So it was like I was working at that, like I was kind of seeing from every angle, like how can I correct this error? And finally one day I had went to the courthouse and I was trying to get a expungement. Like I was really trying everything. And the lady was like, it was a black lady. She was like, hold on, let me see what you got and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yo, this like the record and like it's wrong and stuff. She was like, well, let me take you to my manager. And the manager was like the clerk of the court. So she like made a call like to Richmond to the state police, man, that she was like, check back tomorrow. That thing was finished. Like, you know what I mean? That's something that, kind of took me 2 years, to get off. So I had Fat Boy, had said like, hey, come substitute, like, get some money. And so, we used to get paid $100 a day. You work from 7 to 2, and I was substituting, and then later on, one of the assistant principals at the time, Steve Coulter, shouts out to him. He was like, "Man, you got a degree? Like, let's go ahead and teach." And like I said, it was just like, in this time, even though like, I wasn't going to church and, wasn't really praying and stuff like that, like God still had me. So it's just like, just on that, trajectory of being a teacher and different things like that. So I had no idea I was going into teaching, but it was like you said, just some of those skills of, I would train people, at the job. Um, I would, in school, tutored people. I tutored my valedictorian in high school. Um, yeah, I mean, used to get a couple dollars from tutoring. So it wasn't like, it was so far off, but, it just wasn't my plan. But, now, I see, and it was definitely a pay cut from what I was getting at Sherwin Williams, definitely like maybe like a $20,000 pay cut, at the time. But, you know, sometimes you got to ask yourself, like, is it really worth it? Like for extra, 10, 20, you gonna work till, we was open, what, 8 o'clock on holidays, 7, throughout the week, and required to work, was it 48 hours? You required to work that, but everybody know you gonna put in a good 50 to 60 if you trying to, keep your store up and hit them goals. So for $20,000, you gonna work 60 hours a week when, just teaching. And it's not saying that's everybody's calling, but it was just more of it doesn't really feel like work. And so now I'm really getting like what people were trying to say, like, make sure it's your passion and different things like that. So, I think, even though I didn't necessarily have the plan, it was, I had experience, I had discipline to, where, God was putting me where I needed to be.
It definitely sounds like a beautiful part on your journey, Nate. When I'm hearing now, I hear Nate got this calling. You starting to get that. When did the spiritual Nate start to come about? Nate got a new career. You loving what you doing. When did this transformation that I see my
Mm,
dog with? When did that start to happen?
Man, so like I said, had my son 2012, 2015 graduated. So dang, that was Sir Williams was like 7, 8 years from there,
Mm-hmm.
from like
Mm-hmm.
2014. So where we at in the math,
We out there. We
calculated the
said
penny. Hold on, let me.
2014. So you probably right now we at 2019, 2020, right around COVID. That's what I'm thinking about, right? Because you left, you said right around COVID. I think I moved to Houston. I don't even remember when. Nate always remind me. It's been 5, 6 years in
Yeah.
Houston for me now. So we left right around that
Mm,
time. We had a shift. So I would say, yeah, around
yeah.
there, Nate, 2022. You said
So
2020.
2021,
One.
2021, 2022. So, my son, so when he was 5, his mom moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. So it was like Charlotte, North Carolina for a few years, Raleigh, Durham. Then it was Northern Virginia. So last year's, matter of fact, really around this time, because it was about April, like Resurrection Sunday. Um, Matter of fact, yeah, what's it? March? It was about to be March. So
Mm-hmm.
I started going to a Bible study, just like, okay, go to a Bible study. They kind of had food there. And
Mm-hmm.
Malachi Johnson, big shouts out to him. He was like, man, I need you to pull up at my church. And so I said, all right, you know what I'm saying? And I just remember even saying, like, I was studying a lot of things, at that time. So, from Hebrew Israelite to five percenter to Islam, and just kind of like seeing some similarities, and just like just having a heart for people, because it was like, okay, I could see like, yeah, I needed like some of the discipline that was in the teachings of Malcolm X, or just different things. I think you can draw from, different spiritualities or religions, whatever, they want to call them. But at the time, like, so Malachi, I was just like, hey, if a person live their life right, then I go to their church. You know what I mean? I see, what's going on. So, went to the church. It was Calvary Revival Church in Norfolk. I heard about the church is kind of considered a mega church, in the Virginia standards. But it's they Bishop Courtney McBath was there for a long time, but I didn't know it, but his son-in-law, Pastor David Osborne, and his wife, Pastor Lydia Osborne, became the lead pastors like, less than a year before I came.
Oh
So,
wow.
when I came there, I just remember like just hearing the word, and I'm understanding now sometimes, like when the Holy Spirit is moving, like I'll be crying, you know what I mean? So it was like I was coming, you know what I mean, to service and just crying like every Sunday. And then Malachi asked me to help, like, with the youth ministry for middle school and high school. And he was like, man, I need your help. We need some brothers up there. And, I was like, man, that ain't me. He was like, man, you a teacher. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this, yeah, this is where you need to be. So, I've started to, help out, with that. And, then in the summer, my son came, like he normally do, for the summer. You know what I mean? I'm doing, summer break, spring break, fall break, winter break, every break, like, then he was living away. But it came down to like that last week, and he was like, he wanted to stay with me. So I was like, some more crying because, you know what I mean? I'm like, God, like you really know how to do it because he was changing my life, I'm saying, at that time to, become more. Cause I used to always feel like I would, have my son and then, okay, I ain't going out with y'all. I ain't, you know what I mean? I ain't, linking up with, this girl and, going to the bar and different things like that for, the time when he was here. And then I would go back to what I thought was, really, me. And, I think God was really kind of speaking like, nah, like, what's really you. I've been trying to show you like what's really you of being that youth leader and, being a father to your son and, just, loving God and, loving people and making disciples and revive culture. These are the mission of Calvary Revival Church. And I'm just so blessed to be in a disciple making church, So it's, yeah, we believe in God. And then, my son wanted to get baptized. And so I said, I'll get baptized with you.
Oh
But I
wow.
probably got baptized when I was his age, So, I had just been like, kind of in a sense, like running from God for about, 10 plus years. But when I decided to get baptized again, just really to support him, but it got down to it, it was like, okay, I think we say it so fast, like, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. Like we think of it as one thing. It's really two things. It's like, I think my baptism when I was his age is just like Jesus as my Savior. And then now this one is Jesus as my Lord. So that means like, serving him and this, like I said, was just researching a lot of things. Like, so, I even saw like, okay, yeah, Hebrew language didn't have a J, but his nickname was Yeshua because, his real name was Yahushua it's really more translated to Joshua. If we really wanted to get down to it, but the nickname Yeshua and then Greek translating that to Jesus, is how we got the name Jesus. But Yeshua, Yahushua HaMashiach is, Hebrew for, the Messiah. So that's I kind of understood that, and it was different things like, Courtney Midbeth was preaching mention, every once in a while, and just like, hey, look, like this is, it's similarity. Like I'm Moses, like this Joshua, Pastor David bringing y'all into the promised land, and now he's retired, as a lead pastor. But yeah, man, that was just a spiritual time, and just like being able to, like, in that summer too, while I had my son, like, I wasn't working. We get 2 months off in the summer. So, I just had time to like really get into the word, really, you know, strengthen my prayer life, really, like just, have a closer relationship with him. So I'm kind of even seeing now some of the things that I went through is like it won't even really for me. It was just for me to like be able to relate, to that person. And sometimes like, my students or something like that. Oh, can you relate? Yeah, I actually can. You know what I mean? I tell you the story, what I'm saying, if you really want to listen. So I think, being personable and like, God not telling us like, what I mean, to do nothing like, that we can't do. Like it's just telling my story. You know what I'm saying? That's just, at the end of the day, that's all it is. Hey, this is what God did for me. These are the things that I saw. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, when I was out there lost, and there's, plenty of stories. Like, I have been, shot at, and, as a person standing right in front of me, and a bullet didn't go, through them, and it's just like, those little things, or, just like with different females and stuff like that, is like, I should have some more kids and a STD, and, all of that. But, God blessed me that I didn't have all of the consequences I mean, should have got. But, I do, have some, and, it's not the result of God, I mean, it's really the result of me. So, yeah, that was my spiritual journey probably about a year ago. And just like, yeah, I would say that just like the big, year. And there's different scriptures I be finding. Like, one time Jesus was saying, look, you didn't choose me, I chose you. So you would be able to do, everything. Um, you would be able to accomplish everything through the Father, through me. So, and I don't get all the scriptures right exactly, what I mean, how they supposed to be, but it's translated. That's what it was. It was spoken before it was written down. So, the essence, is kind of still there. So, man, I definitely, love that. And then even with Norfolk State, like, that's something like, it's like, if I help somebody get into Norfolk State, and, I have lots of students that, are on scholarship and just have been inspired. But it's like, oh, Mr. Parker, like, why you do that? Like, you could make, what I'm saying, this, or you have done this and that. It's like, hey, I do it, because of God. Like, that's where he kind of showed me my path. And, I'm only telling you because, what I mean, he told me. So that's, man, it's just truly a blessing to kind of really find your purpose, what I mean, and your calling. And, it's a men's group, what I mean. It's I ain't got nothing on Rails men's group, y'all. He would you got like 500 members?
Man, it ain't the quantity, it's the quality,
Okay.
Nate. Remember that. Like, and remember,
Yeah.
we steal boys after all
So
this time. 650 though, Nate. Since you asked, 650.
yeah,
We getting up there. We trying to
six
be
feet.
like
Oh, look. Yeah, yeah.
humble
Y'all
brag, but
getting
we
up
getting up
there.
there, G. But I think the beautiful thing, Nate, about the Nate B
So
story that I want. Go ahead, keep cooking.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's a men's group that I go to. I didn't start it, but shout out to Malachi, and shout out to Stephen Green. But it's 63 members in the group chat. So we kind of meet, and you pulled up on me. We went to one of the meetings. It was homecoming, so it was a little light, but just when the brothers is gathered together, and we really help each other out, and come with any problems. And say don't forsake the assembly. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Well, I think the big thing for me, Nate, even with you saying that, is seeing the journey with Nate as he continued to go, seeing the growth with my dog as we continue to talk about it. I think that's the beautiful part of the vision, Nate. For me, just speaking as your homeboy and seeing you.
Um, I think I was just summarizing, like, just having my son full time, and just like meeting with the brothers, and just serving, at church, and not just that, like, it was like the Great Commission, like go and make disciples of all the nations. So that's like, just like I'm seeing that, and it's a lot of times it's like one at a time. You know what I'm saying? It is one brother, it is one, this, and planting seeds. And I just was, talking with some people at school, and it goes like from staff, like from teachers to security to lunchroom, custodial staff, like it's just definitely like they'll be talking about the kids, and I'm like, look, like don't give up on them. Sometimes you'll plant that seed and it won't, they'll be a freshman, but just dropping those seeds, like with the youth, it might take, you might drop some freshman year and they don't get it to senior year. But at the end of the day, it's just like it's just like we care. You know what I'm saying? We care about the students, we love them. And I think like God is really showing me just certain things, like even that I look young, you know what I'm saying? Like that ain't really even for me. Like that's to relate, to the youth and stuff like that. And so, sometimes my students can't believe when I say my son 13. They like, what? But it's just a gift. And just like even being smart, like that's a gift for the spirit, knowledge and wisdom, and those things are gifts. So it's just like, how do you use it? How do you, glorify God with that? And, like you say, He gonna give you the desires of your heart. So I really
That's good.
believe that.
So in all your phases of transitioning, Nate, now that you are in this season, if you had to talk to 17-year-old Nate, what would you tell him?
Man, mm, dang, mm,
It's all right.
that's tough. Well, I mean, I would say, because it's kind of like, as I'm looking back now, it's kind of like just yet, like everything that I went through had to produce me, and just even seeing that, asking God for these, like, why God, like, why I gotta go through this, or why my daddy do this, or why the BM do this, you know what I'm saying? It's like, look, like that's for you to, share your story. That's for you to relate. But I would say I would, get that one piece, because 17, I might have was about to lose, what I mean, my virginity and stuff like that. At that time. So I would say, like, yeah, just keeping that. I think nobody really told me, like, they told me not to do it. You know what I'm saying? But they ain't really say why. And they didn't even, kind of like, give me something to look forward to. So I think, I would change like marriage, like, hey, like, okay, go to college, see what different people is talking about, and just find your wife, maybe like 20, 21, because you can hold out that long and really have a beautiful relationship. I think he was definitely some good girls, and definitely it's it's a girl I want to marry. I met her when I was in ninth grade. And so I think like getting to college, like, because I didn't have like that real equipment, like, hey, this is why you shouldn't, or this is what you can do right. I think that's what advice I would, give myself, at that time. Like, Yeah, you can find it. Don't try to get $1 million in your bank account. Don't, what I mean, before you do this, don't try to graduate. Before all of this. So, that was, yeah, I would have changed it up that way.
So Nate speaking about the power of mate selection, the power of transformation, and the power
Hmm.
of growing up, man, as a black man in this country. Man, Nate, phenomenal interview, brother. You broke it down. You gave us much details, man. And to all the other black men out there, Nate, man, what's something you want to give them a nugget on the road, man, about your journey? Because I don't know if you know
Yeah.
it, Mike. You were on your Malcolm X path. Malcolm didn't convert to Islam until 13 years past his time. You were actually very
Mm,
close to that target range. I don't even know if you know that. So your transformation
no, yeah.
is a side because people don't know Malcolm did 12 years in prison, man. Then he came out, then he
Mm,
transformed. So you
okay.
know what I'm
I know
saying?
he definitely did some time.
Yeah, he did 12 years.
Yeah.
Now I love, I'm a scholar.
Yeah.
So your transformation is right on cue around your age frame when that happened. So just
Mm.
where you are now, man, what would you tell other brothers about journey, all the stuff you're doing?
Um, hmm. I would say, like, getting a house, that's definitely one of the most important things. Like, there was times, like, like I said, we couldn't get into every story, every low
Mm-hmm.
point, but
Mm-hmm.
there was times I couldn't pay my mortgage, and it was like mortgage relief, or deferment, or forbearance. Like, there's so many programs to homeowners, but if you renting, be 3 months behind and see if they
That's real though, Nate. That's real.
you
That's something
know
we don't emphasize. That's real. That's
yeah.
real.
And so that's like a real wealth. Like, how they say, oh, my kids ain't gonna want for nothing. Like, okay, before you worry about Jordans, you know what I mean, for them, like, worry about like where they gonna, stay and stuff like that. So I would say that to the black brothers. I mean, already, saying to myself, I say that same advice. Get your wife early, just get your wife. Like, it's just, there's even a scripture that say, like, the prayers, if you ain't doing right by your wife, your prayers ain't gonna be answered. So I think that kind of strengthens your prayers. And there was so many, when I started to really study the word, there was so many like references to Jesus as the bridegroom, of the church. Like, he's coming back for his church. He's loving, his bride, and, dying for us when we were sinners. So, there's a lot of examples and similarities between that and the marriage. So, get that together, and it just, and I would say, like, I've been one, you know what I mean? I've had a little, you know what I mean, some of everything, you know what I'm saying? Black, white, Spanish, Asian, just different walks of life. It really ain't all, you know what I mean? It ain't all worth it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Once it's done, it's done. And it ain't, it just ain't all that, what I mean, it's cracked up to be, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I was about it, you know what I mean? I was trying to see where the 304 was at, you know what I'm saying? But man, if I would have, you know what I mean, worried about my wife, I would have, kept on, you know what I mean, to a lot of money, a lot of, you know, just a lot of like business decisions and different things, like, and then I would say, find your calling. I think a lot of like, there's kind of somewhat of a movement that people be anti-church. Oh, you don't need a church, and where two or three is gathered in the name, and that's true. But he also said, don't forsake the assembly, so when we really get together, and that's really, yeah, it's not the end all, you know what I'm saying, be all, but when you there, like, you getting your worship on, you hearing your message, and then there's people that may have dealt with, what you're dealing with. Matter of fact, me and another brother, he got, his mother of his kids. I got he was asking me for advice. I'm like, look, I ain't got no advice for you, for you, brother. But there was an older cat, Pastor Barbie. I know he was in Atlanta for a long time. but he has a nice, beautiful blended family, and everybody gets along. So it's like, hey, Pastor Barbie, can you help us with this? So that is the foundation. And Jesus spent all this time, like he spent 3 years, his ministry performing miracles and dying for us. And but it was to equip his disciples with building the church. So if we didn't need the church like at all, and I know there's some problems at the church. We saw the Drewski skit. We laughed. You know what I'm saying? That was real funny. And sometimes, you may get a feeling like this. Hold on, this a lot of this performative. This ain't right. You might need to find the right church. You might,
So as Mate is talking about her on his journey, keep going, G.
again.
I already know.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm I'm gonna tweak it.
You might. Okay. You might need to find the right church. For you, and kind of after that, that's where you'll see, okay, there's this person that maybe do the same thing that you do, and maybe has some advice for you. But it is in the church. Oh, but what I was really getting back to, what I was really saying, is that Jesus took all this time establishing the church. Like the disciples, they all the after Acts is Acts of the Apostles. So Thessalonians, Book of Timothy, Philippians, Ephesians, like these were all about the establishment of the church. So if we didn't need it, we could have just stopped there. Oh, Jesus died and he rose again, and that was it. All right, you know what I mean? Close the book. But we see this text has lasted, 2,000 years for us to read, and and it's still going on. So man, we gonna mess things up, what I'm saying, from time to time. We ain't gonna get everything right, but there was a purpose for church. So I found that community. And like you said, hey, just getting with the brothers. Look, y'all 650 strong. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes my pastor be like, look, all the men stay up. Look, all the men come. We gonna start praying for everybody early. Come back after church at 5 o'clock. All right, Pastor, I'm on the way. Let me
That's
get some
awesome.
wings first.
That's
But
awesome, Nate. Man. No,
yeah.
I think that the one thing about it, Nate, I love your journey. I love what path you on now, brother. I love just to hear this because you sound happy, brother. That's the key.
Uh,
My dog Nate is happy and you at peace, man. Junior with you. And Nate, what does this next season of life look like for you, man, as we close out?
man, so Junior, little Nate going to high school. He want to come to my school. I see Norcom is a historically black high school. And I would do that because I think the most important thing is like guiding our children. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I think our parents made the mistake of wanting us to do things they didn't do. You know what I mean? So it's just like, nah, like, hey, if you can guide us in the right direction. So, guiding him to high school and just really seeing like, what God has for me in ministry. There was a group I was a part of, Young Life. When I was in middle school and high school, and now they're starting a group at my school, and they asked me to sponsor it as the teacher. So I'm just saying, like, okay, God, like, you really you really like showing me my purpose, and just walking in that. And then with my brand, my clothing line product, it's really the whole thing. And just like going into it, it started as one way, and it was changing, but the whole thing is really like product of Yahweh. And I wanted to kind of not get too religious on people. Is kind of like similar to like fear of God. Like people just really like wear it, and I wanted people to wear it. But if you really want to search for the deep meaning, if you really had that question, I'll let you know, about it. And so just celebrating those stories, of Black history and just different things. I think God is definitely going to show us something within that, and just how I could do a lot of things in business, but I think He's really going to show us how He gonna bless my business. Um, so yeah, so just getting my son to high school and to college, and then with the youth, and and they're starting to kind of grow with me. So I have people that have graduated. It's my fourth year teaching, so I got all these graduating classes, different people doing different things. One of my students he's in TCC and in the reserves, and he came back to school yesterday. We had a little pep rally. So just seeing like, those students like really giving back and stuff like that. So that's my plan. I don't have everything mapped out, you know what I'm saying? Because God could just, show me different. And like He said, like, just take care of today. He'll take care of tomorrow. And that's where I'm at right now.
That is so awesome, man. If you don't know my dog, what's your socials, Nate, dropping for you in case somebody needs some prayer, some guidance? What can they find you at, big dog?
On Instagram at Nate underscore P757. Um,
Say
yeah,
it
that's
again like
that's
you
the
Umar Johnson, Nate. Say it 3 times like you Umar.
at Nate underscore P757. Shout out to Umar.
Shout out to but it works, Nate. People
Yeah, he
remember it.
came in office state. He
He
came in
came
office
there. He
state.
came. Shout out
Yeah,
to him, man.
NAT underscore P757. Yeah, you can catch me at Calvary Revival Church on Sundays, with the youth. Um, yeah, that's kind of all I'm like kind of using right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
guess
all.
I might, get some more social medias, later, but right time. Just enjoying my
Mhm.
wilderness season, enjoying my like taking a break, from that. But yeah, that'll be me. That's my name.
I love it, Nate, man. And good to see my dog. If you need my dog, Nate, man, awesome guidance, awesome advisor, great business mind, too. Nate don't like to emphasize that, but great entrepreneur mindset. Great, Nate is great all around, man. It is so good to chop it up with you, man. Make sure you share this, man, and the video will be out soon. I will chop it up, Nate P. Good to see you, boy. Hey, any more questions? Follow my dog.
And we gonna keep learning. That's what I would say too. This my last piece. I'm gonna let just keep learning. I'm learning every day, watching different videos on this and that, and where people stand. And real be dropping that knowledge. So check him out, King Crowder. You know what I'm saying? King Crowder on everything.
On
He
everything.
definitely drops that knowledge that you need to know. So that's big, man. We're in this era of technology where we can use those things and promote these messages. So make sure the message is good. You know what I mean? Make sure that messenger is right. So
If not, I'm just gonna
I
delete it,
definitely
Nate.
support
I'm
my
just gonna
dog.
delete it. It's gonna delete it. No biggie. Hey, Nate, I appreciate you, man, Nate. Love my dog. Until next time, Nate, we're gonna get up
Love
out
you
of
too,
here.
bro.
All right,
All
peace,
right,
Nate.
family.